start, so gather up. We're going to start down at this end, and I'm sure we will be spending some time at the other end as well. But welcome to our sneak peek program, generously sponsored by Lisa and David Carlin. For those of you who don't know, I'm Jane Lavino, and I am the Sugden Family Curator of Education and Exhibits. And we schedule these sneak peek programs whenever a new exhibit is about to open. This one officially opens to the public tomorrow, so that's why you see that the labels aren't quite all up yet. Ooh, they got this up. A few little pieces may still be coming in the exhibit, but it's soon to be completely ready by tomorrow when it opens to the public. Another added benefit, before I forget, is if you are attending the sneak peek program, you are entitled to a 20% discount for lunch in the Rising Sage Cafe. Just introduce or identify yourself as a sneak peek program participant to take advantage of that discount. So this exhibit, Elegy, the African photography of Nick Brandt, is one that Adam is going to tell us about. Adam is our Peterson Curator of Art and Research, if I got that correct. And he's going to tell us about the images and the artist. Thanks, Adam.
All right, and then Bronwyn's also going to chime in and talk a little bit about the photography aspect and some of those details. So this is a collection of photographs by Nick Brandt from 2001 to 2008. He wanted us to make sure that everyone knew that because he has, over the since 2008, ventured on a sort of a new direction in terms of his photography. And so these represent one kind of period of his career, and his more recent ones represent a different period. He's phrased his work since 2001 as a trilogy that's covering these different experiences that he's had in Africa photographing these amazing animals. The first part of the trilogy is called On This Earth, the second part is called A Shadow Falls, and the third part is called Across the Ravaged Land. The first part in particular, On This Earth, focuses on beautiful animals and beautiful landscapes living their lives, and really is meant to show you the beauty and peace of these creatures in their natural habitat. A Shadow Falls, the second part of the trilogy, the story begins to get a little bit darker. He explores some themes related to human incursion into animal habitat and poaching. And then the last part, Across the Ravaged Land, really gets much more into depth about the horrible things that people are doing to the elephants and the other animals in Africa right now. And I'll just come over here and show you these books. So even though it's a trilogy, it's represented in two books. This is the first two are in this book. And then you can see, again, like beautiful animals and their beautiful landscapes. The last part is this, Across the Ravaged Land, which a much clearer emphasis on humans and poaching and the ivory trade and all of these things that are happening in Africa right now. Nick Brandt was born in England. He, in his 20s and 30s, directed music videos. In 1995, he went to Africa with Michael Jackson to film a video called On This Earth, and it was at that point that he decided he wanted to do an artistic project that would capture his experience and try to communicate his feelings about what he saw when he was over there. He decided that photography was the best medium in which to do that, and he started going over again in about 2000, 2001 to photograph these creatures. Over the course of that time, from 2001 to about 2010, 2011, he saw these beautiful creatures that he had been photographing grow more and more wary of strangers, more and more scared of him approaching them, and mostly because of the poaching and humans coming into these animals' territories. So he created a foundation called the Big Life Foundation, which has sent rangers in to protect these animals and has given them a sort of a viable way of making a living by protecting the animals and not making a living off of killing them. So he's tried to turn it around. He's taken his photography and then turned it into an action-oriented project. And Bronwyn pointed this out this morning, much like we had the John Weller photos of the Ross Sea, where he's trying to bring your attention to a certain conservation need through photography. Nick Brandt is very much trying to do the same thing. These photos were immediately appealing to us as a museum because they are noticeably different from a lot of the wildlife photography that you see. They have kind of a classic timeless quality, and that's in part because they're black and white, printed in sepia tone. And that was part of his goal, Nick Brandt's goal, especially in the beginning of this project, was to present you with these images that felt timeless and that captured this place in a way that didn't specify a moment, but seemed like it was ongoing. The unfortunate part is that he's documenting a way of life for these creatures that may not continue to exist for much longer. We arranged the exhibit in terms of some very basic categories. Some of the real highlights that people are familiar with are over here. The elephant with exploding dust has been used many, many times in many different ways. So if you know Nick Brandt, you probably know this image. Another really famous one is the zebras over here, and then the cheetah family is on that far wall. The exhibit continues around the bend, and then we'll just walk kind of slowly down. We can point out some other aspects of the show. This one is cheetahs and one leopard. So on this wall, you've got these great different pictures of cheetahs, both by themselves, kind of silhouetted in portrait mode, and then also what you'll notice as you go through is that he also likes to depict families of whatever creatures they are. And I think that with that, he's really trying to get you to think about these creatures in broader terms, about their own social relations as beings who have perhaps their own rights in the world. He has said in a few different ways that he wants people to realize that these creatures are sentient beings and they're not just put on this earth for us to use. They have their own, rights and abilities and should be given the freedom to continue living relatively unhampered by us, but as we know, that doesn't really happen. So, elephants over here. He obviously loves elephants, and some of that message that he wants to convey comes across really well in the pictures with the baby elephants. Because how can you not, look at that and then think about this bond between the mother and the baby? And as we know, we share a lot of characteristics with elephants in terms of our own maternal and paternal instincts. This guy is another one of his most famous photos. He goes out in the field and will stay in his vehicle, but he gets very close to the animals, and in the beginning they may not be comfortable with his presence, but over time they begin to realize that he's not going to shoot them with a gun. He's going to shoot them with a camera, and so they become more comfortable with him around. And so in this case, he waited for days and days and days, and then he was obviously on the other side of this water hole, and the animal presented himself in this fashion, and he got to take this beautiful, beautiful picture.
And he does not use the telephoto lens on him.
Right. So Bronwyn's going to talk a little bit more about that in a sec. We'll go quickly down here, and then I'll turn it over to Bronwyn. The other species that we have are giraffes. He loves giraffes. In part, I think, because of the incredible patterns, not only of their pelt, but also of what they do with their necks, and then when they get in these groups, they do these amazing things and create these beautiful natural patterns. So this is a triptych, so these three are really meant to go together, and they're just these three beautiful shots of this group of elephants.
Giraffe.
Giraffes, sorry.
We knew what you meant.
You know what?
Yes. Oh, well.
He was testing us.
He wanted to see if we were paying attention.
He was
Exactly.
testing us.
Obviously lions are a big deal. There's one lion that didn't fit in this grouping is all the way down by the library, and I really encourage you to go down and look at it. It's another family kind of portrait, and his, here's another family one, but he's trying to get not only a beautiful shot of individual creatures, but give you some sense of their habitat, their landscape, and how they live within it. I think we've all gained a new appreciation for rhinos after seeing these amazing, amazing pictures. Not only does he show you, give you a good sense of the whole creature, but the way that he does this photography, he's able to bring out this amazing texture and, I wrote down another good word for that, and almost sort of age of these creatures, all the wrinkles and all the dirt and all the way the horns are rubbed and the skin is just like this amazing intimate view that would, I think, be hard to see in person, and it's hard to see in other photographers' work as well. The end here, we break from the single animal groupings into different styles of photography. So this is more based on portraits, and then this is more based on wider landscapes. Most of these are showing animal migrations, elephants, zebras, and there's some wildebeest in that picture, which is fun to try to find, and then that's a kind of a classic wildebeest migration photo. One of his goals, especially with the portraits, is to treat these creatures as if he were doing a human portrait. So he wants to convey that same sense of intimacy and of being that you get in a great human portrait. And one of his great lines is, you wouldn't take a picture of a football player with a telephoto lens from 100 yards away. If you wanted to do his portrait, you'd get him close, seated, and you'd take a nice intimate picture of him. Also, what he doesn't like is in these things is to have the animal's mouth be open. So he says you wouldn't take a beautiful portrait of a person with their mouth open. In the same way, all of the mouths are closed on these creatures, and it does kind of change the whole dynamic of the way they look. These are all taken in the field. So he's not setting up a studio or bringing these animals into a camp or whatever. The only one that might not be is this one, because this little zebra would come into the lodge where they were staying, and we have a photo of him in that lodge that's not in the exhibit. But this may be the wall of the lodge, but otherwise that's a rock behind there. This is just a kind of washed out sky background, and then this is a bush, I think, back behind this lion. So I will turn it over to Bronwyn at this point, and she'll say a few words about the photography, and then we'd encourage you to ask any questions, and we'll stay around to answer them.
So just to follow up a little bit on what Adam has been talking about and all of the different things that Nick is doing with these photographs. He's making quiet portraits. He's creating sort of a timeless idea of these really amazing, majestic animals, and he's using photography as his tool to do that. Oftentimes when we see, if we're driving around in the park, or we see people that are photographing in Africa, people are using lenses that are like this long, and they might be this big around. And they've got like a couple tripods holding the whole thing up. Nick is not doing that. He is using he's using film, first of all, in a medium format camera. So if any of you used to shoot film cameras, mostly people were shooting 35 millimeter, which was about this big. Nick is using a medium format camera with a 6x7 format, so the negative is about this big. So the camera is much bigger, and the film area is much bigger. And he also is not using a telephoto lens or a zoom lens. So he is relying on his distance to the animal to get that intimacy that we see and that we feel in these pieces. So he's in his Jeep, or possibly maybe getting out, you know, really quietly, and a lot of times in these pictures you see he's a lot lower, so he's probably getting down on the ground and shooting at the animal like that. And he's using shorter lenses, so maybe a 200 millimeter lens, and he's using what's called in photography depth of field to create this very, very small plane of focus. So like we saw in the elephant way down there, you're getting like just little parts of it are in focus, but maybe the back part is out of focus and the front part is out of focus. So he's creating some detail and intimacy with this animal, and then letting us really hone in on that. So he's bringing us in with these photography techniques. He also is using some filters on the camera, not in Photoshop, to accentuate the sky and things like that. Then he's developing his film and creating, let's see if we've got some texture with the chemicals. Then what he's doing is taking his big negative, scanning it, and doing some darkroom techniques in Photoshop. He's stopped using a lot of this stuff because it is extremely easy to do in Instagram. So it's sort of like a hokey thing now for people to be doing. You can do it really easily on your smartphone, is add filters to things. So he's sort of gotten away from using some of this stuff and gone, you know, still using the large format and the medium format camera, but not as much of the chemical kinds of things. He's sort of using the best of both worlds. He's using film camera, a lot of in-camera techniques, and then using the digital darkroom to create these prints. Let's see what.
Oh, the infrared.
Oh yeah, and you'll see in a few of these, there in one of the giraffe pieces down there, and then in this piece here, both of these pieces, he's using some infrared film, which creates this kind of glowing, otherworldly sense in the trees, because infrared film works works best with greens. Let's see, what else am I forgetting? Does anybody have any questions about that?
You can see this chemical, I
Yeah.
think you were talking about right here on this piece,
Yeah.
so that's unusual. You don't-
It was unusual.
It was, yeah.
So I emailed him and I said, how do you get those effects around the edges? And he said, it's trade secret and I really would rather not tell you,
And I
but
don't do it anymore.
yeah, it involves some chemicals that he puts around the edges, and then he exposes it either to light or to sun, and then it burns or does whatever around the edge. But as Bronwyn said, he doesn't do it anymore because you can just do it with Instagram immediately, and so it's taken away like all the work and the care that he took to do this. Now it doesn't register the same way with people because you just see it all the time. So more often these days, his shots are much more straightforward like this without the edge treatment. And I love the edge treatment, but also his more recent pictures are not supposed to be like these timeless sort of overarching beautiful scenes. They're supposed to they're telling you what's happening right now, and they want you to do something about it. So it makes sense that the more current ones are not as manipulated as these are.
Bronwyn, do you really mean he got up close? Oh, yeah.
He got pretty close, yeah.
Yeah, pretty close.
You can do it.
Yeah.
Has they had his funeral yet?
No, he made it clear that you can't be out there on foot. He's in his truck, he's in a protected situation, but he's built up a familiarity with these creatures enough that they're not running away the minute they see him.
It's similar to what we have across the road. So the reason why they don't want us riding our bikes in the winter on the bike path is because the elk don't like something on two legs walking. They've gotten used to cars. But they don't, but they're not, it's more scary to have someone walking towards them, a human.
And they're okay with the sleds and the horses, but not just us.
That's one of the reasons why they don't want us out there while the elk are all down.
There is 2 great clips on the iPad down there that are of Nick in a gallery show in New York, talking about the trilogy that I talked about at the beginning, and then talking about individual works of art as well. The great photo that I pointed out with the elephant with its trunk in the water, one of the reasons I think that he founded the Big Life Foundation was because he, after coming back to Africa, after he had shot that elephant, he found that that elephant had been killed and its tusks had been sent to China. So he has a very personal relationship with these creatures, and he goes back and tries to find the ones that he's seen before, and that kind of destruction that he's seen really prompted him to want to do something about it.
These tusks can cost as much as $1,000 a pound, I understand.
Right.
It's
So
phenomenal.
yeah.
It's a lot of money to some of those people.
There was one of the other elephants, picture of it. Somebody said that those tusks could be worth like $50,000 or $60,000. So I mean, it totally makes sense economically that people are driven to do that. But again, the foundation that he did is trying to give people an alternative and make money protecting the animals, not make money killing the animals.
Couple questions. One is, where did he do most of his filming? What countries? In parks?
So it's
And-
all the labels are at the ends,
Oh, okay.
and they all identify where they were. So
Okay.
there's Serengeti, Lua,
Okay.
Serengeti, lots of Masai Mara, lots of Amboseli. So the big kind of preserves where you would be able to go and find the creatures.
And this exhibit then really doesn't follow the trilogy.
So this is like the first part of the trilogy, where you're getting images made to make you appreciate the beauty of these creatures and maybe get to think about them in a different way. The last part of the trilogy we don't have any photos from, but that's in that book that's on the stand. And part of that is because when we acquired these, or they're actually a promised gift, and we picked them all out in 2007, 2008. And so at that point, this was the focus of his work. And it's only been in the last 5 years that that really darker side has come into what he's been doing. Any other questions?
Thank you.
Yeah, if not, thank you all for coming, and I'll stick around for a little bit if you want to come up and chat. Otherwise, enjoy some lunch in the cafe or enjoy looking at the exhibit.